This video is going to be about a lot of things. Most importantly, I'm going to bring up safety warnings concerning the 209 shotgun primer and the various devices that it's used for. It can be used for making noisemakers, actually propelling objects, even golf balls. But the main thing is I'm going to be discussing an experiment I've done and what I've come up with as far as information. So let's get to the experiment first. This is a ream. It's used for changing the diameter of things and also removing burrs. This is a center punch, but it's tapered so it can be used for expanding the diameter of an inside of a tube and also punching holes. And this is one of those stainless steel straws that you probably already own. Some of these have a seam in them that's very visible. It's actually kind of dirty. A lot of the times when you have used it a couple of dozen times, you might want to check it. Look down the barrel. Next thing is the interior of it is approximately the equivalent to 0.2 inches or 20 caliber. This does not match with most commonly occurring pellet guns or rifle bullets or pistols or whatever. So this is not about how to build a gun. But let's say I wanted to put in a shotgun primer in this. Shotgun primers are approximately 0.24 inches in outer diameter, 24 caliber. So having it go from that diameter down to this one, it's a small change, should cause an improvement in velocity or performance if you were to treat this like you were doing a cartridge. You could even take a primer, glue a 20 caliber pellet somehow on it, jam it in here and treat it like ammunition, which it would be at that point. And this would be a smoothbore barrel possibly, or not. But if you put in the primer at this end and then had a constriction down here and shoved the pellet down here, this would be treated as ammunition or a muzzle loader. We're not going to discuss how it's used or the constriction that is there if you're not aware of it, you can't see it visually. But anyway, we start off by removing the inturned end bit where they crimp it in towards the end to where it makes it a lot less sharp on your mouth when you're sipping your water. Then we go here and bang it back out and maybe even smooth it with this until we get the diameter big enough that we can do it in the next stage. We use any piece of metal rod, this one happens to be a tool, that has a 0.24 inch outer diameter because there's no inner diameter, it's a metal rod. And then we proceed to pound it in, making sure that we flared it out just enough by using our tapered center punch that we get this effect where it's 0.3 inches deep. Now, I've just told you every detail about making a primer pocket in a metal tube. That's not telling you how to make ammunition because you're not going to want to load anything in this. Again, pellet guns are available. They can even be rifled. You can get something that fits them perfectly, and then in the back skirt of it, you can put in like petroleum jelly, and it'll go to Mach 1. It's called dieseling. You don't need to do this, but we're going to do this for another reason. A noisemaker for a flare gun. Let's get on with it. But there's a reason that noisemaker, cap gun, start a pistol, or a safety blank gun to scare someone has a bore obstruction in it. You don't want something getting stuck in the bore because then it really is like a damn gun. I'll be discussing the foot-pound rating in a minute. Anyway, we'll put our tools away over here. By the way, you then have to cut it to length for whatever you're doing next. You'll find out lots of straw diameters fit this. There's one inside of this that fits it perfectly. And you can do that, and you can make it look like a straw, even though obviously you started off with a steel straw, and now you're making it look like the plastic one you're trying to avoid using. Anyway, let's move on to something sane. And also I should point out that some of them, it'll fit into them, and you can use it like that, it'll get stuck. Watch out for that. So, what can we put down the barrel of this thing? I'm just going through the props today. This is a ground pin off of my power adapter that broke off. I filed down the end of it. It's hollow, but it weighs, when I measure it, the same as a 22 caliber bullet. And guess what? Goes right through. It didn't hit enter. Massive importance. So what can we do with this? Well, I found some aluminum spacers someplace, so I decided to try to make one. They're about that diameter. By the way, I found out that this would chamber a 25 ACP if I got one. We're not going to do that on camera. That would require a rifled barrel, which is pretty cheap. Buy a barrel, or just don't bother with this. But anyway, we're going to do two ends of how convoluted I can make my subcaliber adapter for my flare gun to make a noisemaker only because I'm trying to scare away four-legged pests or two-legged ones. Well, we use a bunch of these and make this. The outer diameter of those aluminum things are about the same diameter as what the flare gun wants, and this one fits the diameter for a shell, and 2-inch tape, and you're good, right? And looks kind of cool. Except that would still chamber something. And that took a couple of days for me doing trial and error. So we shouldn't do that. Let's put that away. What if I wanted to just shoot something out of it using the shotgun shell because it's already got a hole in it for a primer? I didn't do this because it's practical. I just wanted to put it through the process. You see, this is the same as making a subcaliber adapter for a 25 ACP. This metal tubing in here being put in there means this is not a smoothbore 25 ACP. That's a weak round anyway. You might be better off again with the pellet gun. But let's say you wanted to do a 22 caliber barrel. It's $35 for a 3-foot length of it. You could obviously make one, and it's rifled, so it's legal. That would actually work really well, and it would require almost the same dimensions, in fact identical, because a 22 Magnum has the same socket size diameter, pocket size diameter as this does. It's just not as deep. This is a 1/3 of an inch. 22 caliber Magnum is an inch and some change. But this is all heavy duty. Well, does it really need to be heavy duty? Probably not. You'd fire 22 shorts if you wanted to not blow up the gun, because even the force of a 22 Magnum is going to be able to damage the gun. But let me show you what else I found. Instead of shooting a blank, shotgun shell, nothing in it, we could put something in it. Random objects. You can use a paintball. They make rubber balls. They can't hurt anybody, right? What about corks? About 100 to 200 grains, just like a flare gun cartridge uses. Almost the same mass. You know what else we could put in? The butt end of a whipit cartridge, about 100 grains here. The 100 to 200 grain value for a flare gun cartridge. We'll bring up why that's variable in a little bit. It's a very dangerous reason. We could even use the nose of one, because they're kind of heavy, nose heavy. Would that be a terribly bad idea? Let's talk about firing something big and clunky that will go slow and not hurt anybody, just for fun, right? It'll fit in the bore. You can just wrap some tape around it and it'll create an air seal and fire out. The amount of mass creates the amount of kick. The amount of kick, it'll push back. The amount of pressure it builds up will cause the front and back of the 12 gauge flare gun to come apart. That's why they blow up. You can't have any buildup like that. You could glue a 12 gauge shell permanently in one, or you could just glue the whole thing shut, drill it out, and make it a muzzle loader only, and something like that, right? Also, you could drill a hole in this, put the barrel in there, or a 209 primer, and make a neat looking subcaliber adapter, which is what I did, just to see how long this would take. Instead of taking, I think, 18 man-hours, this took 15 minutes. The longest duration for it was just drilling a hole, getting the drill to work correctly, and making this took 15 minutes. That's all the props I got. That's all the toys I can show you. It's a show and tell video. Totally wasting everybody's time, right? Okay, let's talk about the 209 primer. I'm going to actually look at my text file now. I was going to call this the 2020 examination of 12 gauge flare guns, but let's get on with it. Flare cartridges can come in 55 caliber and 70 some odd caliber, or paintball caliber, depending. And the thing that actually shoots out of a flare gun cartridge, like you get with your Orion flare gun, the PUBG one you look up, is duplicated in Europe, especially in Germany, for making fireworks, because they use a launcher. It's a pen launcher or even a pistol, and it shoots either a 15 millimeter, aka 60 caliber or something like that, or a larger one. It'll be like, let's say, 71 caliber. So aside from using whippet bottoms or corks or a ground pin out of a busted power cable or all this other kind of stuff, what could you fire out of a shotgun shell for fun? Well, again, paintballs and that sort of thing, right? Well, let's talk about the flare gun here real quickly. Flare cartridges on the back end of the part that lights up has to have a delay time, otherwise it would just start on fire immediately after being fired. And they're driven by a primer. The primer could throw them up 200 or 300 feet in the air, depending on how efficiently they're made. And if they're jostled around a lot on your boat, sometimes the gunpowder propellant, because it is gunpowder propellant that's been packed just via delay time, adds propulsion to it. How much propulsion? Well, when they weigh the cartridge, the actual thingy that shoots out, that's the flare, they find out that the flares themselves have a variation of 175 grains to 200 grains for the big hefty one that's basically a full bore shotgun slug. But it's only being driven by a primer, except when it powders off this stuff and then it adds more propulsion. It goes from 330 feet per second to 615 feet per second, producing foot-pound ratings up near, but not quite, at 150 foot-pounds. That's bordering on being a very light shotgun slug. What about the ones that are more consistent? The Sky Blazer suppository-shaped ones don't have much slough off, so they stay at 109 grains, and they hit at about 13 to 18 foot-pounds, and they're about the same diameter. And they have a rounded nose on them, and they're aerodynamically correct, so they can get higher. 425 feet instead of 250 feet. What about the long, skinny flare cartridges? Well, they suffer from the same slough off of powder, and those are called the flares versus the meteors. And they are 55 caliber slug coming out of a sub-caliber adapter like I built here. That's why it's legal. It's the same kind of thing. But anyway, they're the 14 millimeter projectile versus the other large one. They go out at 424 to 531 feet per second into ballistic gel 6 inches deep. And they have a round nose on them, so they're aerodynamically correct. And apparently will penetrate. And then they start on fire. And that's just being fired legit by a primer, shotgun primer. You can still punch something that big, 55 caliber, 6 inches into ballistic gel. The Standard Fusee Corporation said the Red Meteor, the one that we were talking about that's a shotgun shell type, only goes out at less than 200 feet per second. It's 14 foot-pounds of force because that's what it says mathematically for all shotgun primers. That's a 170 grain object. But that means there was how many grains of slough off, or are they just using a different size? Let's talk about other 209 driven things, like the Guardian 209 Derringer. It fires a 17 caliber pellet gun style pellet, but it's round. It's a 8 grain object. It comes out at 500 feet per second, 5 foot-pounds of force from the same propulsor. It's a shorter barrel. Shorter barrels waste energy. What if we put it through a full-length barrel like you find on a AR-15? Well, you can take a 223 cartridge, drill it out with a 15/64 drill bit, and stuff a 209 primer right into it and fire it. And it'll come out with a 22 caliber bullet, or pellet, at 800 to 900 feet per second, 25 foot-pounds total energy being expended more efficiently. And that's a 15 grain projectile, half the weight of a normal 22 caliber bullet. You can also get gummy soft slugs that are fired out of 40 caliber cartridges in grand old Europe, 40 caliber barreled thing, using a 209 primer. They come out at 11 foot-pounds of force, and then they come out at 1,100 feet per second. Supersonic speed. You can also in France get a street-legal, non-lethal shotgun that shoots hard rubber bullets. They come out at 90 meters a second, 23 foot-pounds of force, breaks a rib at 5 feet, or you can use the shotgun shell that fires rubber pellets that are around 32 caliber. They hit with 2.6 foot-pounds each, but the total amount of energy is 31 foot-pounds, from also including anywhere from 18 to 40 grains of actual gunpowder. And it's totally not lethal. Now, again, at 5 feet, you can break a rib with a slug. With these little pellets, at 30 foot-pounds total energy used, but 2 foot-pounds per pellet, a pellet can penetrate a chest and enter the heart. France is so safe. So, again, before anybody criticizes me for doing this stuff, anyway, these are pellet gun performances like you were dieseling them from a 209 primer that's not supposed to be able to do any of this shit. Mathematics doesn't work out, testing does. And these are test results I could find. I hope this video has been useful for you. I'll try to have a synopsis in the video's description. You don't have to watch any of my videos. You can pause them and watch on screen by reading it what I would have said. My conclusion. Even though I can fire one of these or one of these or one of these out of a shotgun shell in a flare gun, none of them are safe because of the PSI ratings and foot-pound ratings I've detected for today. Thank you.